So thank you for being here. Thank you so much for joining for this. This is the fourth of the Stars Track panels. This one focusing on learning platforms. So I'll quickly introduce the panelists who are so gracious with their time to join us today. To my right, we've got your left. It'd be Alessio Artuffo from Docebo. Next to him is Adrian Ridner from the CEO of Study.com. And Alessio, sorry, I should have said that, President and COO of Docebo. Next to him is Lucy Suros, who's the CEO of Articulate. Next to her, James Rhyu, who's the CEO of Stride. And then Chip Paucek at the end, CEO of 2U. So I guess we'll start here, just kind of with the topic of the shift that we've seen from more in-person learning pre-pandemic to more online learning. What does that look like in your end market? And where do you think we're at when you think about the end market that you guys are each playing in? Where are we at in terms of the digital adoption or transformation story? And I don't know who wants to start. If anyone wants to volunteer, otherwise I'll just call on someone. Anyone?
You guys go.
Do you want to start, Alessio?
James, you're in. I tag you in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to start. I think, our business, we serve a primarily online population pre-pandemic, and our business exploded with the pandemic. I think people got a really good taste during the pandemic of online learning. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, I think that was a negative taste. I think people really reacted negatively to the way online learning was delivered because people weren't prepared, both, I think, at the district side as well as the family side. I think that, to me, the disappointing thing is that now that we're sort of on the other side of the pandemic, I think we see too many districts have reverted back to not being prepared. And I think that we have to live in a world where we're continuing to evolve towards more options, towards more technology. We have to evolve in a world where we're really rethinking not just delivery, but preparation. And so, I actually think that, unfortunately, we took a huge step forward with a lot of negative consequences, but then we've taken a few steps backwards, particularly, I think, in the K through 12 space. We've taken a couple steps backwards that we need to really figure out how we progress and embrace. And I think we're going to hopefully talk a little about some technology and platform stuff. And I think a lot of those technologies and platforms can work really well in the classrooms to help us prepare better for what I think is, eventually an evolution of, I hope, of the space in K through 12.
Helpful. Maybe Adrian, did you want to?
Yeah, I think that, and we operate in 3 markets, right? So we're in K-12 and then higher ed and professionals. What I would say is I agree with a lot of sort of the K-12 perspective. Although I think that one thing that changed is I do think academia became a lot more receptive across the board. I think a confusion was remote virtual classrooms over Zoom isn't online learning. It's certainly not online learning rethought from the ground up on how to be effective and done well for all types of diverse students. The other thing that we saw is, in some ways, just the credibility, especially on the adult side, if it's college or if it's working adults and professionals, where it was now an even playing field. Like, online was not really seen as inferior. Actually, a lot of people understand it's now superior because it gives you more flexibility. It can give you more personalization. You can do it on your own time. So we saw a lot more acceptance there across the board, certainly from a direct-to-consumer perspective.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about the corporate learning space. So what we saw was that digital transformation was already happening in the enterprise, which is who we serve. And COVID, the pandemic, just accelerated that digital transformation. I still believe we're in pretty early innings. And what we have seen in our customer base is that the pandemic sort of unlocked this awareness around all the different use cases for digital learning in the enterprise. So we're seeing, I like to describe it as like popcorn all over the enterprise of different use cases that, different departments, it's not just happening in HR, but, sales folks and IT folks and, basically every single line of business is realizing, oh, there are so many more effective ways to teach the folks in our organizations new skills and new behaviors. So we're seeing that has accelerated, but there's still a lot more room to grow there as well.
That's helpful. Chip, anything?
Well, I'm just super excited to not talk about regulatory affairs, to be honest.
That's coming next.
So People think of us as the degree guys because we started the company 15 years ago, but we are one of the largest we think we're the largest producer of tech talent on the planet. So our boot camps are global, and the technology training is critical. So I would say it's interesting, like just across the 15 years I've been doing this, it's kind of crazy that it's still controversial, to be honest. It shouldn't be. For the consumer, it's not. So like the consumer's there. You don't, when you go shopping, you don't think, oh, I'm going online shopping today. You just go shopping, and you do it in a multifaceted manner. That is where the consumer is. So when COVID hit, our bootcamp business was entirely physical, and it is 100% online, and will never go back. And it's global. So I guess I would say university adoption is still shockingly small. Global higher ed is still local and physical for the most part. So, if you think about where this goes 10 years from now, we think, hopefully, 10 years from now, it won't be as controversial, and adoption will be strong. When I started the company, we had one of our early clients, the students did a sit-in to prevent the school from opening because they were so worked up about it cheapening their degree. You fast forward to today, consumers all in, but we still have to get, like Steve Case wrote this great book called The Third Wave, the founder of AOL, he's a friend of mine. The third wave of the internet, the first wave was like the infrastructure. The second wave was like services laying on top of the internet. The third wave is really the hard part, which is like embedding it into all of our lives in a meaningful fashion. And really, some industries that's very difficult, and you're only gonna get there through partnerships. So, healthcare, like why is all of your healthcare not online in a meaningful way? Education, probably the worst. It's like still today not digital enough.
Got it. Maybe we'll move on to the topic of personalized learning. As you think about, and you're each kind of playing in a different portion of this ecosystem. So when you think about the in market and the opportunity to truly personalize learning, what does that look like? In terms of delivering right content, right time, thinking about the right format to learners. What does that look like in your end market? And maybe Alessio, did you want to start on that?
So we operate in the corporate space, and we're seeing a tremendous shift towards, everybody talks about a skills-based economy. Now, it's pretty clear that over the past few years, there's been an incredible opportunity for companies across talent mobility and these new categories, the LXP, have arisen. The fundamental fact is there's been confusion in the marketplace as to who actually addresses the skills-based gap or skills problem from a learning technology perspective and workflow. So I think, when we think about the skills movement and we think about what's happening with ChatGPT and new technologies, I think we're at the very beginning of an inflection point where we're going to see automation step into place a lot more. We think about curation manually a lot at this point, where there's people that take care of creating curriculums that satisfy the needs of a certain category, but the reality is we have a lot of information in our systems today of what the job of somebody is, what their aspiration should be, and have all the data points to connect the dots between what they need today in order to be somebody else tomorrow. So I think we're headed towards a full automation of content development in the sense of curriculum, automation of curriculum creation. And I think, vendors will have to adapt and lead the way.
Yeah, I think there's two sort of dynamics that we're seeing happening, and one is that learning has to be delivered in the flow of work at the point of need, and that the content creation should be also developed close to that point of need as well. Quick micro-learning delivered when someone actually, needs it is going to be the way that we see the wave of the future, and having the integration between all these different systems that have all this intelligence about what someone is trying to do in a particular workflow, where the gaps are in their skills, and then serving up that micro-learning that they can just in that moment get that training that they need. So that's one thing, and then really democratizing learning creation. We just don't think it's going to stay, because we've seen it in our customer base. It's not just an HR problem. It really is something that I know with the pandemic, a new awareness of, oh my gosh, we have all these teams that we really need to make effective, and they're remote. How do we teach them how to do things? And it really just unlocked this new mindset about how learning should be created, and democratized it even more.
You know, what's kind of cool about being on the panel with you is like, one of the few companies that's actually been doing this longer than 2U. You know, so I feel like there needs to be like the OG track at ASU+GSV. So do you remember way back the robot tutor in the sky? Does anybody remember that? It was super controversial at this conference. There was a company called Newton that was going to make this adapted learning, and they were talking about it as a robot tutor in the sky. What's kind of nuts is we kind of have the robot tutor in the sky now, right? So AI, we think it's transformative. We're super excited about how to, we're embedding it across the entire platform. So, you know, we'll have a bunch of things to announce, but that's not the important point. Like, both from the standpoint of what you can do for the individual learner, and then also how you can match people. And we think that, like, you know, the long-term strategy is to really become the best in the world at matching people that need their lives changed in some manner to high-quality content. And we think if we do that, like, our content velocity at 2U is really taking off. So every day there's a new announcement of another either corporate or university partner offering some kind of content. And so the goal is to get as personalized as we can. I mean, we just did this thing that's cool called Try-Its. So it's a new thing for us. So like, one of the biggest problems for people is just getting started. And so these Try-Its are little tiny pieces of content. They're really good for the enterprise channel also, which is now growing rapidly at 2U. And so just getting people started. And we find that, like, on the tech side in particular, we think the Try-Its is probably relevant across the business, but we're just rolling it out across all the tech products. So, you know, I mean, I think the opportunity is massive. What are you guys doing?
You know, I think one of the things that, at least in the K through 12 space that I see, the tools, the technologies, I mean, all these, the things that everybody's talking about are available, and they're available in the K through 12 space too. I think the hindrance that we see in the K through 12 space, at least, is that most school districts do not think of their customers as customers. And if you really think about that, it's astonishing, because in every other industry over the past 20 years, if you think about the evolution of every industry in the past 20 years and how they've made the customer experience more personalized, the customer experience has become more individualized, except in K through 12 education. And the tools and the technologies are all there available, but there's this resistance because the education establishment thinks of the customers as an entitlement. And when you think of your customers as an entitlement, you don't evolve. And I think it's incumbent upon us, if we want to get out of the gutter of the educational systems in the world, we have to evolve. And we have to embrace the technologies, and we have to change the way we think about education.
And just for fireworks, I'm going to disagree slightly.
Boom, there we go.
But so I would say yes, and partly. So a quarter to a third of our subscribers are teachers, mostly in K-12, some professors in higher ed. Now, you all know what teachers make, and they pull out their credit card to pay for the subscriptions on their own because they want to innovate, because they understand that by using study.com, they can actually enable their students to have a better future. When you ask the best teachers, what's their job, they don't talk about knowledge transfer. They say, my job is to build momentum for my students. And yes, some of that is knowledge transfer. Some of that, a lot of that is confidence. And a lot of innovators want to actually try different things, stuck in a system that maybe is not fully supportive of them doing it and everyone doing it at scale. But I think there's a lot of people with the right will who are trying to sharpen the skills to do it and look in a lot of different ways. So
let me be clear about one thing. My comments are about the institution of education in K through 12.
Yeah.
I agree 100% with the teachers' comment. We manage over 10,000 teachers, and if you actually sat and watched teachers in our education system, you'd be amazed at what they do, fighting against the system, actually. So I 100% agree. I think the problem is the system and the institution as opposed to the teachers. The teachers are, I mean, by and large, they're wonderful. They're, as you said, they're trying new, innovative things to do. But we're holding them back in many cases. And I think it's, we've got to really rethink. You know, everybody knows that there's this huge teacher shortage. We don't. We're actually oversubscribed. We have more teachers than we can handle. Why? Because I think we arm them with those tools. We arm them with the freedom and flexibility to innovate. And I think that that's the model that we have to really embrace.
And maybe, you know, as I think about, you know, this is a panel on learning platforms, you know, as we think about, you know, it seems like with study.com, you know, you're serving K through 12 all the way up to higher ed, you're serving all the way up to some test prep. You know, Stride, you know, used to be K-12, you know, you're kind of expanded into more adult learning solutions. You know, how do you think about, how important is it to provide solutions across all age categories? And do you view that, how do you view that as a competitive advantage for your business? I don't.
Yeah, I can go. So for us, it's a big advantage, right? So we have over 30 million learners and educators on the platform across K-12, higher ed, and professionals. And there's a couple of things that make that really, really powerful. One, when we invest horizontally on the platform, so if it's on the content, on the adaptive learning, on AI, every single learning outcome gets better. And I think that's really, really valuable. Also, with the scale that we have billions of data points, right? So we can feed that data and really understand not just how to diagnose things, and what's really exciting about the technology and where not just ChatGPT, GPT more generally is going is, I think we're getting to the point very quickly where we cannot just intervene when we know something is wrong. We can also predict when the outcomes are going to be bad and intervene before and change the path dynamically for that learner. So I think with the breadth that we have, that's a huge ability to leverage the data. I would say the other thing for us is when we get a learner that gets an aha moment very early on, they tend to stick around and come back for a lot of the other learning challenges and opportunities that they have. And I guess the last thing where it's a huge, from a selfish business perspective, advantage, during COVID, we saw Test Center for test prep close down, all the ones that were in person. That part of the business took a crap. Homeschool and K-12 exploded and went through the roof, right? So that diversification also just brought a lot of sustainability and profitability to the business model.
James, maybe did you want to talk about the expansion a little bit for you guys beyond K-12 and kind of?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us at least, you know, I think the realization is happening now across America that college degrees are not necessarily the way the way to a better future. I mean, for generations that was the path, and I think, you know, we talk about a skills economy, and the reality is that a lot of those skills, and if you walk around all the big technology companies that are sponsored here at this conference, they're all talking about no college degree required. Why? Because it's more about skills than it is about degrees. And I think those skills have to start at a younger age. They have to start at high school, even as early as middle school. You look at the European model, that's the way they do it very successfully. You look across the globe, that's increasingly the way the countries are adopting their workforce. And so I think really for us, it's just one continuum that happens to start in grades K through 12 for us, but really goes all the way through, you know, lifelong learning and corporate training.
We think it's a story of and, not or. I'm sure you're not surprised by that. But so we obviously have a lot of degrees, and what I would tell you that's notable is like for our London School of Economics bachelor's program. So we power every bachelor's degree for the London School of Economics. That was our first undergrad. And what's really notable to me is like the average age was much lower than we expected. And then in our technical boot camp business, we launched last summer. We launched coding for high schoolers. And it's just super interesting in that business, the percent of the audience below 26, much more than we expected and growing. And so there's no question that people want, you know, people need skills. We think the degree is still super relevant. You know, you can't make a dent in the problem worldwide without both. I'm pretty proud that like in 2016, I was here at a conference where there was no alt cred, and we acquired our way into a business that was Cape Town, South Africa based, which is why we have 900 employees in Cape Town. Now, it was a tiny company at the time, executive ed short courses. It was called Get Smarter. Now we still have that, and it's big now. And so, like the story of alt cred is a big part of how you make a dent in the problem. And it's only getting faster because of AI. So like that Goldman Sachs report yesterday, 300 million people losing their jobs. Like if you haven't spent time with ChatGPT, you have to, and you have to integrate it into your work life. It's constantly open on my desk, like at all times. And it is, for Google, that's a huge problem, but that's not the point of our panel. So I would say, ultimately, like we do think that more training is needed worldwide. And so it's not a story of either or. And I do think, over time, like I've got the founder and CEO of edX is sitting right there, and on Argowal, he's kind of like my co-founder at 2U now. It's been really fun, and like there's a lot to do. And as we bring in more content, who knows, maybe we start going down in age, But I think ultimately we're focused on workforce development worldwide.
Competitive
I'm
challenge.
just
Well, let's shift a
I was
little
just
bit
kidding.
towards the corporate.
I also feel like I should not be talking that much. Everybody else should talk.
But yeah, I was gonna shift focus a little bit towards the corporate workforce
go.
development side of this. Upskilling, reskilling. How do you, and especially Lucy, or Alessio. How differently do you see companies thinking about their upskilling and reskilling pathways now versus 5 years ago, and where do you think it's heading?
I think part of what's happened when you look at sort of the macro trends around work from home, remote hybrid work, DEI and the racial reckoning, you think about the kind of folks that are coming into the workforce now and have different expectations for what their employers should be developing, how they should be developing them. So it's not just like, hey, learn how to close a sales deal. It's not just about that skill. It's how do you be a better manager? How do you have, some of the soft skill stuff, but it's more just like how the companies themselves are again, it's not in the walled garden of the HR department, but really having to think about learning as a strategic advantage to keeping their workforce, so they're not walking. And the Great Resignation was a big wake up call for a lot of companies around that. So I would say that we're seeing a shift in terms of not just skills based, not just here's how you are the human machine, so to speak, in this industry, but that you are unlocking more relational creativity and you're unlocking more development. And I think with AI, we have to do that starting at pre-K, because you're not just going to have knowledge workers anymore. AI is going to be the knowledge. So how do you really unlock creativity and the human component? And I think that's where we're going to need to go pretty quickly here.
Well, we started at Docebo an AI group in 2017 in the company, and have built technology that focused on automation across the entire platform since then. Over the past couple of years, we started thinking about how were we gonna succeed if everything we're doing skills-wise is a bunch of clicks and requires people to do a lot of manual work. And so we started introducing the concept of auto-tagging in skills management. I think that's just a very little example of a transformation that will happen across multiple systems where, again, from very manual approaches that are tedious on the customers, we're going to see skills a lot more embedded in the workflows, in the systems. One other thing that I want to say about skills, I feel like there's a tendency, and I think this is a tendency that happens in corporate learning a lot, because many think, we're an LMS in corporate, and perhaps some of you think of us as an internal training technology. The reality is there's audiences out there that transcend your employee. We've actually made it a point of growth for us. 65% of our customers use Docebo for internal and external use cases. And so when we think skills and we think skills ontologies, we don't just think the skills as they pertain to an employee in a company. We think about it in the context more broadly of an end user that has to master a skill in order to accomplish a goal. And whether that individual is an employee of a company or a member of an association or a retail frontline worker of a company or a customer of ours, those are all different personas that need to be developed over time to accomplish a certain goal. And so For me, the skills economy goes well past beyond the internal talent mobility perspective, but it's way broader, and that's why we have a ton of opportunity out of us.
Yeah, and that kind of fits into, I was going to ask, kind of the next question was going to be on the shifts that you're seeing in the way that companies are trying to train and develop talent, and the shift, maybe three different components to it. One, historically a lot of spend has been in person, offline, so the shift from that online. The second, using proprietary content, so internally developed, versus best of breed third-party content, or is it a mix? Is it, do companies have different strategies around that? And then the internal versus external. Like, where are most companies starting to think about it that way? Where are we in that kind of journey? So I don't know if Lucy, if you wanted to start.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about proprietary content because that's our bread and butter. So, last year, 4 million courses were created in our platform. And if you look at like LinkedIn's whole catalog, it's like 17,000 or 16,000, their whole catalog. So we also know that proprietary content is way more valuable to learners. If you're, I was talking about this example yesterday, but if you are needing to train your sales folks on objection handling, you can go and get a LinkedIn course, I'm sure, on objection handling. But it's way more powerful if you have an objection handling course that talks about your products, your competitors, like how much more valuable is that going to be to your learners, and how much more relevant is it going to be? And then, we believe that moving that even closer to the salesperson who's really killing it on objection handling, they're closing twice as many deals. If you can unlock that person's knowledge, and you're taking a course by Mary, who's just killing you, then you're like, oh wow, Mary knows what she's doing. I bet I'm leaning forward in this course. So we think proprietary content is, we know from studies too that companies feel like proprietary content is the most valuable content, and learners feel it's the most relevant as well.
I'll take it on the internal versus external, because that's what we've been focusing on a lot for the past several years. We started seeing a shift in corporate strategy and learning allocation of budgets. I would say that shift, we started observing it about 10 years ago, so it's not as recent as folks would think, but certainly over the past 5 years, the adoption of learning technologies to satisfy needs of users that are not the employees of the company alone have skyrocketed. We've tracked actually the customer education as a use case of a few, and if you were to track the stats in LinkedIn of job titles in the customer education world, you'd see that it's 1,000% growth, which is an indicator of a category that is not just being created because it existed before, but is being funded, and there's a lot of value in it. We actually commissioned a research on the size of the customer education market, tracking at about $6 billion for the United States alone. So our belief is if we can just tap into 5 or 10% of that, that's an incredible opportunity. And a company like ours that is currently at about $150, $160 million in ARR, growing 30%, double-digit EBITDA positive by end of year, we look at that as a tremendous opportunity to reinforce leadership. So
Stephen, I think you know that we're known as consumer, but enterprise is the fastest growing part of 2U. We think that's a $500 million segment. We think it's big. And so we see it with exec ed short courses. We see it with technical training. And what's kind of neat is like the flywheel inside of edX is meaningful from the standpoint of now a lot of these corporate partners, like we'll announce one tomorrow that like you'll be like, what? And when you see it, and it's like a good example of core training in a particular industry that you really can't find anywhere. And then as we bring that corporate partner on, they now want to offer it to the world also. So like that sort of enterprise flywheel is a meaningful part of the journey for the next 5 years for 2U.
We've got about 5 minutes left. I want to do some quick hitters with you guys. First one here, how the big shift in the markets from focusing just on growth to now it seems like the balanced approach is more in favor. How are you balancing growth versus profitability at this point? Maybe we'll just go down the line. I don't know, Chip, do you want to start?
Profitability.
Yeah.
Sure, that was like, that's it. I mean, of course we want growth, but profitable growth. I mean, it's, we're 15 years in. So I'm kind of obsessed with getting us to positive EPS.
Well, I've been with the company 10 years, and we've been profitable all 10 years. We've had
I
profitable.
don't rub it in.
We've had profitable growth for 10 years, and I think that there's always a balance. And the market's coming in out of favor between growth and value and all this other stuff. But I think for as long as I'll be the CEO, regardless of what the markets think, I think delivering bottom line free cash flow is what our investors want, and long term that's going to deliver value. And I think we do that in a way that's really focused on delivering value for our customers. I think they go hand in glove for a company like ours, and so I think as long as we're focused on that customer and delivering that right customer experience, we're going to deliver that profitable.
And by the way, your stock has held up better than anybody in the space, honestly.
So I'm going to one-up you. We've been highly profitable and high growth for 20 years, more than 20 years. So for us, it's always been about how do we build sustainable growth. And we did a big Series A last year. Was that? No, I guess it was a year and a half ago now. And we didn't need the money. So it was really about getting the right partners around the table. So for us, it's all about continuing to grow in a really sustainable manner.
I really had to go after Lucy, 20 years, but I'll one-up you a different way. So I think we're the only one on the stage that, as Deborah said last year, we're one of the handful of bootstrap unicorns that she's seen in the space. So we've been profitable from the first year, growing very quickly, and I think the sustainable growth thing is a big deal, because for many years, this question would have never been in this panel. It'd be like, what are you doing to grow faster? What the hell are you doing not raising $200 million and burning it all in 6 months to grow at all costs? So I love the question, because it's been our philosophy for over a decade. So thank you.
Sustainable growth, profitable, no debt, high efficiency, customer experience. That's where it's at.
I think I wouldn't be asked to moderate any more panels if I didn't ask about AI. So we got 3 minutes left. Keep it short. So AI, generative AI, how are you thinking about the implications? And the way I've been framing it, are you optimistic, fearful, both? How do you think about it? I don't know if we want to start at the end again. Or yeah, Alessio.
I'm super excited about it, so I'll go for it. Big believers. Planning on investing in it and accelerating adoption. We believe that it's going to be everywhere. It's going to be very soon in changing the way we do the basic things, from going and searching for a keyword online to really anything we do online. So we're going to have to embrace it. In terms of the impact in our world, there's evidence already of changes that are happening in several categories. I think content automation is going to be a big category. Curricular automation is going to be a big category. And we're seeing the perspective of using it for real existing problems like translation, management, at scale, where it can be used now, right? In fact, we leverage it already. So yeah, we're very focused on it, and whether organically or inorganically, we'll be very interested.
Yeah, as a software engineer by training, I'm an informed optimist. I can see a lot of the downsides. We've been using AI for a long time. ChatGPT in particularly, we're close to lunch, so I think about it in 2 ways, soup and pie. I love soup. So standalone users for productivity, what Chip was talking about, is open all the time. There's an MIT study, 35% productivity for white-collar work that is being peer-reviewed right now on that. And I think that's going to change and transform how we all work. And then pie, product integration and expansion, I think is the big thing. A lot of things you were talking, we know a lot of things across all of our segments. And my biggest concern is responsibility and responsible use, and making sure that actually, especially the early ages, we're very careful about how we're integrating AI when students can't tell the difference and learners can't tell the difference. So that's one of my biggest concerns.
26 seconds.
Yeah, I would say both, and it's really exciting. It'll be integrated everywhere in all of these technology platforms. It's going to have to be, or you're going to die. And also, it's going to be hugely disruptive to society. And I think that we're looking at a huge sea change.
I'll defer the last 10 seconds to Chip.
So my dad's awesome, and so I think this is the most important. Hey, why am I talking about my dad? Well, I think this is the most important technology of my lifetime, and so I'm trying to show my dad ChatGPT, and I'm on Zoom, and I'm trying to show him like in the window, and my dad is like blown away by the Zoom, you know. I couldn't get him to focus inside the window, you know. I was like, no, Dad, I'm talking about, and he's like, but this Zoom thing, you know. But honestly, like it's incredible. It's going to change everything, I think. I mean, I do. I think it will change how we all work every day. It's super meaningful. So you'll see a bunch from edX in the next 6 months.
Since we're over, I'll just take
Yeah.
take 10 seconds. Like the one thing in the K through 12 space I think is important for all of us to remember, because it's the ages, you know, it's younger ages and stuff like that's different. But you know, if you're old like me, you'll remember that calculators were banned in the classroom, and then Google came along, and people were worried about Google. You know, and I think that there's been this fear in the K through 12 space about adopting new technologies and how it impacts younger learners and things like that. But ultimately, the technologies take over. And so we have to find that right balance of how we integrate them and use them and apply them for our younger learners that can really be impactful without taking away that educational experience. And I think the comment about creativity and fostering that creativity and analytical thinking skills is really important because, at least for right now, probably, ChatGPT is not going to be able to do that. And irrespective of whether it can do it or not, I think just having the kids be able to really be a creative, critical thinker is really important and learning those skills.
All right, well, we are out of time. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much to our panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.